All right, Alyssa, the news this week, annoying. I'm just going to put it out
Just another week. It's just another week.
It's annoying. You know, it's waiting room annoying, though. It's not you've received bad news annoying and now you have to deal with it annoying. It's like waiting and stewing to see how bad things are going to be or not. So let's get started with one story that kind of has us in purgatory. There is a case right now that is being seen by a judge in Amarillo, Texas. And that is the case of an anti-abortion group asking the Food and Drug Administration's approval of medication abortions be pulled. The group that has filed the lawsuit, I mean, which we can acknowledge is bullshit, right? Like it's bullshit.
Bullshit.
The abortion pill is safer than Tylenol.
It's safer than anything, and they're asking for an injunction, which sort of means that there's immediate harm, and the drug's been on the market for 20 years.
Right. And there's immediate harm to everyone in the entire country. It doesn't matter where you live. If this okay, look, we talk about design flaws in the American system. This seems like a design flaw that a judge in Texas can make it so women, pregnant people who want to have abortions in California aren't able to? What?
It's fucking wild. How does this make sense?
Okay. So can we talk a little bit about what is likely to happen? Who is this judge that is like deciding the case? Should we be worried?
This judge, we should be a little worried. Judge Kaczmarek, he's a Trump appointee. It's not great.
Okay.
But if he issues, so a couple of things we should know. If he issues an injunction in the case, the Department of Justice can immediately ask a higher court to pause or stay the injunction or narrow its reach. That outcome is not guaranteed given the current conservative leaning of the judges who sit on the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. Also, weird things also happening in Virginia and North Carolina, where the drug manufacturers are asking for injunctions to block state laws that make abortion pills unlawful or difficult to obtain. So, Erin, this is all just confusing everybody about everything. It's like you can't keep up with what's happening, even if it was your full-time job.
This reminds me of playing Magic the Gathering, where it's sort of like, there's so many double, triple reverse. I can't play this game. And also,
how does it happen? How do you do it?
People's lives are on the line, and they shouldn't make a card that has that much power and that has trample and that can override. And I have played Magic the Gathering before. It is very fun, but it's confusing. Okay, so Alyssa, there's fuckery afoot in Ohio, in East Palestine, Ohio, to be specific. And it has to do with a train derailment and a strategic plume of toxic materials that were released in order to get the trains running again. So can you tell us a little bit about what went down and why it's all so controversial and how many people could be affected by the decisions that were made?
Okay, so let's get into it. This is a story that you and I have been talking about because it's like not been getting a ton of coverage, a little bit now, but really not enough as is warranted. So on February 3rd, Norfolk Southern was running 150 cars from Madison, Illinois to Conway, Pennsylvania. When 38 of the cars derailed, a fire ensued, which damaged an additional 12 cars. The derailed cars were carrying chemicals and combustible materials, including vinyl chloride, a toxic flammable gas, which was released into the atmosphere during derailment. That was almost 2 weeks ago. Since then, the National Transportation Safety Board and the EPA have been on the scene. Things we're slowly learning. Governor Mike DeWine of Ohio was never notified that a toxic chemical was being transported through his state. Shortly after the derailment, about 2,000 residents of East Palestine were evacuated and schools were closed for a week. On February 8th, so a week ago, 5 days after the derailment, evacuees were told they could return home after air quality samples measured below levels of concern. However, according to WKBN, the U.S. EPA sent a letter to Norfolk Southern claiming it failed to properly dispose of contaminated soil. Why does this matter, Erin? Because per the EPA fact sheets for volatile organic chemicals, yes, I went down this rabbit hole, vinyl chloride is expected. Don't you worry. I found the fact sheet on volatile organic chemicals. Vinyl chloride is expected to be highly mobile in soil and may leach into groundwater. Many residents are saying there is no way they can eat anything from their gardens this summer. Additionally, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources reports about 3,500 fish and frogs have been found dead, and reports of dead chickens and other small animals are all over social media. Residents say they can smell chemicals in the air and have complained of headaches and feeling sick since the derailment. Governor DeWine is asking Congress to investigate what happened, and Erin, little kicker, found this one out. In 2017, who was president in 2017? Was that Donald Trump?
I don't remember 2017.
In 2017, regulations requiring braking system upgrades for trains carrying hazardous materials were rolled back.
You know, Alyssa, fuckery afoot indeed. There's something that makes me, about this whole story. First of all, it makes me sick. It's so dangerous, not only for the people who live in the town, who a lot of them are like, we're not going back. We don't believe these people who say that it's safe to go back. Because when has the government ever prioritized people's safety over capitalism humming along? Like, never.
We should ask everyone in Flint, Michigan how their drinking water is.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, the people in East Palestine that are being directly impacted right now, I feel awful for them. But what's super scary about this beyond that is the proximity of East Palestine to the Ohio River Basin. If these chemicals are able to leach into the Ohio River, I read somewhere that 25 million people get their water from Ohio River-based sources. Now, East Palestine is not necessarily, runoff from East Palestine wouldn't necessarily affect people like upriver, But what is downriver from East Palestine is Dayton, Cincinnati, a lot of people there. I just, that's awful, and it makes me very scared. But I also think, back in December, we were about to have a rail worker strike that was declared illegal by our government, our current government that is run by people who, you and I probably voted for. And I get that you make the best decisions that you can given the information you can at the moment that the decision needs to be made. And hindsight is 2020. But there's a part of me that thinks that some of the things that railroad workers were concerned about, if they had been addressed, perhaps a derailment like this would be less likely to happen. I'm being very careful with my words. I don't want to say, anything caused the derailment, but let's just think holistically about the fact that maybe we should be more attuned to workers when they raise red flags along like safety concerns, just in general. Yeah. Just always.
Fully agree.
Okay. So, can we talk really quick about Nikki Haley? I know this isn't in the outline, but I just
Sure.
She's running for president. Did you listen to her announcement?
I did listen to her announcement. She's clocking in around 1%. I mean, she's still got a long way to go, but just chill there with Mike Pompeo.
It's so funny because if you listen to her earlier speeches from her career, she's so much more like a forceful attack dog from the like Sarah Palin school of like, guess what? Here I am, bitches. Like she's so much more, and I'm not saying this in a way that's like sexist, like just observing. She just sounds a lot more like aggressive and strong and tough, which I'm sure was a decision.
When she tried to do the Sarah Palin vehicle, whatever you might want to call her trick, where she's like, Sarah Palin did the lipstick and the bulldog thing. Well, Nikki Haley was like, and I'm going to kick those door downs with high heels. And it's like,
yeah,
what? Like, okay.
Just, okay, fine. That's cool. But you could have worn more sensible shoes. Yeah.
She was
more forceful. You know what it sounded like, Alyssa? It sounded like she was reading a storybook to children in the bombed out remains of a library that she burned down because they were hosting drag queen story time. That's what it sounded like.
That was a journey, and that is, I think that is absolutely one of the most accurate descriptions of what we witnessed. She was like, now listen. I mean, on the one hand, maybe she's the one person who can keep a narrative from now until, the election and not have to pivot too many times. But also, Erin, this may be the only way to talk to some of the Republican Party, which is slowly and kindly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just making sure that they know that there's no possible way that America could be bad to people of color, because this woman of color says that America has not personally been bad to her. So therefore, whatever. Let's get rid of AP African American history. So yeah, I think I think we should do a whole show on this in the future. Like, what if the first female president is a Republican? Like, how do we handle that?
We've been saying this for 4 seasons of the show.
I don't think it's completely out of the question. Look, I mean, I will not vote for Nikki Haley. And I kind of hate the whole here, I'm reading the vibes and this is like what people do or don't want, whatever. I kind of hate that being the complete driver of political coverage, especially at this point in the campaign. It's fucking 2023, guys. It is barely 2023. The election
Just
is like,
week you asked for a stay of execution until 2024.
We cannot be here right now. It's barely 2023. And the election happens when 2024 is almost over. Like, no. But I do think that, Nikki Haley is not somebody I would vote for ever for any reason. But there's a lot of time between now and November of 2024. And so I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to talk more about what it means when the people, quote unquote, breaking the glass ceiling are throwing the shards down after them at all of the people who want to follow them. So anyway, we can talk more about that later. But speaking of good stuff, let's talk about good stuff. Michigan. What's going on in Michigan?
On the heels of some very bad and tragic things, earlier this week, there was another mass shooting, this time at Michigan State, took the lives of 3 students and left 5 others in critical condition. What is Governor Whitmer's response to this? Erin, we're so excited because Governor Whitmer narrowly flipped both chambers in Michigan, and she actually has the chance to pass some gun legislation. The gun policy proposals include universal background checks, safe storage laws, and extreme risk protection orders, which are usually known as red flag laws. So we will see if Democrats, if Democrats can carry this across the finish line in Michigan.
Well, hoping that some positive moves can come out of tragedy to minimize the chance of tragedy repeating itself again. One final thing, I want to offer a quick toast, just one quick toast this week to Senator Dianne Feinstein, who announced, or some staffer of hers, unbeknownst to the senator, announced on Tuesday that she will not run for re-election in 2024, which is huge because California deserves somebody who can give everything to serving them. And we've got our, not to brag, but our bench is stacked. We've got such a great bench of potential senators in California. I don't want the race to be knock down, drag out, because I really do like the candidates that have been bandied about so far, and I don't know how I would choose in a Democratic primary. Barbara Lee, Katie Porter, and Adam Schiff, although I would probably be one of the ladies, but I wouldn't be mad if it were Adam Schiff.
Totally.
It'd be fine if it were Adam Schiff, but I probably am going to vote for one of those ladies. So, cheers to Dianne for reading the writing on the wall.
Cheers to Dianne.
That was written on the wall 5 years ago. But she read it finally, I think. So good. Toast. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I have an interview that you are not going to want to miss. And welcome back. Our guest today is a doula and the founder and director at Frontline Doulas, a perinatal program connecting Black families with Black doulas based in Los Angeles County. Khefri Riley, welcome to Hysteria.
Thank you, Erin. Pleasure to be here.
Khefri, do you remember the moment you decided you wanted to do birth work? Like, what prompted you to become a doula?
Yes, I remember that moment. Absolutely. It was the moment that my son was crowning as I was giving birth in the tub at the birth center. My son is 21 years old, and 21 years ago, as I was birthing him, my midwife knew that I came from a lineage of grandmother midwives, what is called the grand midwives or otherwise granny midwives, which are a lineage of Black Indigenous birth workers from the Deep South. My dad's from Greenville, South Carolina, and he used to be his grandmother's midwife assistant. And so I grew up with stories around the grandmother and the sacredness of the grandmother and the teachings of the grandmother and her healing the community and catching all the babies and being the first Black woman to have a phone because somebody had to call the midwife. And if you're the one birthing the whole community, they're going to put a phone in your house. And so this was, in the turn of the century. My father was born in 1924 and she was practicing way before that. And so I had always listened to these stories growing up. However, I think it was the moment of giving birth to my child when my father was holding the flashlight and all the family was gathered around like I was the hearth, if you will. And that sacred flame got passed down as my son was born. And I realized, oh, okay, I'm supposed to do this. We're supposed to help the rest of humanity do this. Like it was quite a big calling.
Yeah,
save the planet.
That's a lot. It sounds like there was a lot going on all at the same time. I have absolutely no memory of the moment of crowning. I remember being like everything was such a blur. I was so so just like everywhere. Yeah. How would you explain to a layperson what a doula does and how doulas impact public health?
Well, a doula is a professional perinatal support person. They're the person who gives you emotional support, physical support, informational support, spiritual support if that's what you're needing, advocacy. They're there for your family. They're part of your ecosystem of care, I like to say. We surround you and empower you and activate you and just care about you and your family's journey as you prepare for your birth, during your birth and after the birth. There's also postpartum doulas that support you in your birthing after in your recovery time, and also full spectrum doulas that support you in your fertility journey. If you choose to do a release of a pregnancy after miscarriage or a stillbirth. So birth workers in general are here to support the entire reproductive journey. We're just not the medical providers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a doula for my pregnancy. I gave birth in late 2021, and it was the most valuable thing that we involved in the most valuable choice we made was choosing to have a doula. And if I can just share with you really quickly, Khefri, when I was like 8 weeks pregnant, this was like a wanted pregnancy, planned, all that. When I was like 8 weeks pregnant, I woke up and I had all of these like scary symptoms and I thought that I was losing the pregnancy. I hadn't even hired this doula yet, but we had a call scheduled that day. And I told her what was going on and she called me. I had not paid her a cent. I had not signed anything. And she like walked me through. It was like the most incredible relationship. And she and I are still friends. Like I feel as though what a doula can be for a person giving birth is like incredible. And I wish more people had access to it. Now, on that note, your organization offers its services for free. So why is financial accessibility so important for the community that Frontline Doulas serves?
Well, when myself and co-founder Dr. Saida Pepper Wilson, we founded it several years ago now, and it was just before the pandemic, leading into the pandemic. And so, when you're dealing with historically marginalized communities where there may not be the access that's typically given to those who are earning more money or have, even know about what a doula is. And typically, that's not there for you. I mean, it's expensive. It's like a fancy luxury item, which it should not be. As I described the heritage of grandmother midwives, that was community care that was accessible to all. But also what I'm describing is not to romanticize it. This is those grandmother midwives were operating in segregated conditions under the Jim Crow South. And then they started getting overregulated and eventually were eradicated as births moved into the hospitals post-industrialization. So now you've got a community that's separated from its cultural inheritance, which is doula care, right? Just for lack of funds or even, this disconnection from that knowledge. And so it's really important to restore and reclaim these cultural inheritances. And it shouldn't have to cost you anything to apply what really belongs to you, which is the wealth that is passed on through our birthing traditions and being there for one another, for extension of family, of creating community and the village, and to bring balance to where there's so much harm that's happening on birthing people right now. Especially in Black and marginalized communities, Black and Indigenous communities are the most harm is present there in our maternal mortality rates and infant mortality rates. So, in order to bring some balance, these services ideally should be accessible to all with no cost.
Let's talk briefly on the point you raised of maternal mortality rates. How do doulas impact maternal mortality rates? Do access to doulas help to ease those terrible statistics?
I always like to tread carefully when we come to placing the burden of healing colonialism or racism on instead of the actual system being responsible for its own reform. However, I never really expect a system to correct itself. And so in a way, doulas are disruptors and become agents for cultural competency in birth rooms and hospitals and birth centers, et cetera. And so doula can help mitigate some of these outcomes by her presence alone, because the presence of a support person at birth is proven to lower intervention rates. This is evidence-based practice. A presence at somebody who's giving you education, advocacy, support, physical touch, you're just basically not alone, can change the birth outcomes drastically. So you're talking lower interventions, lower cesareans, increased breast chest feeding, increased birth satisfaction, lack of other medical interventions that may cause negative outcomes. So as long as you let doulas in these systems, these hospital systems, then you're going to start to see a change in these outcomes. However, that romanticizes it again, like I spoke about a little bit earlier, about us kind of projecting and putting a massive burden on the doula community. Whereas if we need to collaborate and work together with systems and within healthcare navigation, so that way we can really give the clients the best care. Otherwise, you're kind of pushing against something that doesn't want to change. And I think if we're all working together and collaborating, then we're going to see better outcomes.
Mm-hmm. So what advice would you have for expecting mothers, people who are pregnant, who are looking to start a doula relationship, to hire a doula for their pregnancy and birth? What are some good first steps for somebody to take if they're looking for the right doula?
Well, some good first steps to take when you're looking for a doula for your family is to check in with yourself and what it is that you really want for your birthing time. What type of individual would you like around you? What do you need? Are you looking for more education or advocacy? Are you just looking for a soothing presence? Do you need somebody to help you navigate the healthcare system? So find out what it is you're really looking for so that you can communicate that and your expectations to your doula. You really want to check in with, are they local to you? Do they do birth and postpartum work? What are their specialties? Many doulas have additional things that they do, like placenta encapsulation or massage, et cetera. So maybe there's some things that you're really looking for that would close the gaps in your care. You want to look at their connections to the local community and how they can resource you, and is it culturally aligned with your family, and how these things really can impact you means that you feel seen and you feel heard and you feel enveloped with a sense of care, as opposed to when you're going into your medical provider's office, oftentimes, and not always, they don't have a lot of time for you. And so you want to make sure that the doula is able to give you your family time and is aligned with what your choices are and the birth that you wish to create.
Okay. So how can our listeners support doula organizations like yours in their own communities?
Well, look for your local organizations and call them and ask them what they need. Typically, organizations need volunteers or donations or even staffing that can help raise funds and or connect to resources, et cetera. I think that each organization has its unique needs within the community. And so once you start doing your outreach and be active and how you can be an ally and can support the community doula organizations, there's plenty of ways to help close the gap. As long as you can speak up and hold the line, then it's going to make an impact.
Khefri Riley, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for the work that you do. Listeners, we will put a link to Frontline Doulas in our show notes if you want to learn more, if you want to support them. And again, thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you, Erin. Have a beautiful day.